Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be chatting about resumes, and resumes are going to be very important for this class because we're actually going to write our own resumes and cover letters, and then after we have done so, turned in that assignment, you will have mock job interviews for the job that you find that you want to hypothetically apply for. So keeping in mind that we will use those resumes later on, but we will have a resume assignment, so we need to know how to write those resumes. So first of all, guys, what we're going to talk about here is thinking about how you write a resume and why this resume is important. So can you think of the last advertisement you saw? So whether it was on TV, whether it was a radio ad, whether it was in a newspaper or magazine, nail down that advertisement, the one that really stuck out to you. So what helped you remember that ad? How long was the ad? What stood out about it? So when you have that, then think about what would employers remember about you? Because essentially your resume is your advertisement within a field of study, within your field of employment, and that is your resume. So your advertisement is your resume for the job market. Here is a quote from the Ladders.net, a research company, and it says, "Here is every job seeker's dream world, a place where they know exactly how recruiters' minds work, where the reasons for hiring decisions are obvious, where the criteria for an effective resume and job search are as clear as day." And then it says, of course, that world doesn't exist. We can't read recruiters' minds, and certainly not with any level of scientific accuracy. Or can we? So here we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can start to meet those standards of our employers and really impress our employers with our resume, and then following up later in this course with our interview style. So to start, how long do you think the average employer spends on a resume? 5 minutes? 3 minutes? 60 seconds? 10 seconds? 6 seconds? Well, studies have shown that it's actually these bottom three, so 60 seconds all the way down to as small as 6 seconds. So those first impressions with our resume are essential. We have to really make a good impression and really draw our employers into our resume and want to make them spend more time. So going back to this Ladders research, they do eye tracking technology, which is super interesting. So they actually tracked how employers search through resumes, and 80% of the time was spent looking at the following areas. So they obviously look at your name, they want to see your current company and your job title within that company, looking at previous employment and your titles there, start and end dates for your previous positions, start and end dates for your current position, and also your educational background. And also, guys, on this site, again, it reiterates, the study found that recruiters spend only 6 seconds reviewing an individual resume. So 6 seconds is very short for them to decide yay or nay. So maybe you go into the yes pile, maybe you go into the no pile, and that is decided on average in 6 seconds. So this eye tracking technology, again, keeping in mind that these things really need to stand out on a resume, they really need to be accurate, and they need to be formatted well. So then if we think about resumes here, they kind of serve as a screening device, right? When they have these 6 seconds, they're looking at these ideas, screening you to see if you're going to make it into the next phase, the interviewing phase, right? So you can kind of think about this as like a horse race. So you're getting ready to race, you're trying to enter the race, and your resume will decide whether or not you even get to enter the starting gates. So those in the starting gates have made it to that next level, and then think about when you're actually racing around the track is when you're in the interview, and then one person is going to pull away and win the race, win the job in a sense, right? So resumes first are a screening device. Then they offer clues about you. So if they take that extra time, they're going to offer and see clues about you in their resume. So are you organized and thorough in your presentation? Are you able to present your ideas clearly in the resume? Are you accurate in your resume? And then, these are interesting, have you ever lied on a resume? 53% of people, studies show, actually say they have lied on a resume. So we always want to be accurate and truthful in how we are portraying ourselves in our resume. Then, would you consider lying to land a dream job? 70% said they actually would lie to land a dream job. So if you're one of those people, you're not alone, but also going back to kind of that moral code and knowing that we want to present ourselves as accurately as possible, and we can do that. We can highlight our strengths no matter what in our resumes. So again, being accurate, being very truthful. Then I'm going to take some time here to talk about the Notre Dame scandal with Coach George O'Leary. And I'm going to reference an article from the New York Times, and this is down a little ways in the article, as you can see here. And you can't see the whole title, but it says, Notre Dame coach resigns after 5 days and a few lies. And the opening says, 5 days after naming George O'Leary its new head football coach, the University of Notre Dame announced today that O'Leary had resigned suddenly after admitting to falsifying parts of his academic and athletic background. So for 2 decades, this had been assumed to be true on O'Leary's resume. And it says, O'Leary's undoing and the university's humiliation took place in a matter of days, beginning with a series of telephone calls placed this week by the union leader in Manchester, New Hampshire, a newspaper trying to report a feature article on O'Leary. What it discovered was that former coaches and players at the University of New Hampshire could not remember O'Leary playing there, even though biographical information in various media guides at teams he later coached claimed that he had earned varsity letters there from 1966 to 1968. When Notre Dame officials contacted O'Leary, he admitted the inaccuracies first about his playing career, then about the master's degree. Both he and university officials agreed he should resign, and in a span of 36 hours, O'Leary tumbled from the high point of his career. So he claimed that he had a master's degree from a certain university. He did not, and he claimed that he had also lettered in his college football career, and he did not. So this all came out 2 decades later in the media, but just showing that lying on your resume does happen, especially with the cookie of getting that dream job. So just being aware that consequences do come back to haunt us, and we should, again, be as honest as we can in our resumes. All right, so in terms of resumes, again reviewing here, they serve as a screening purpose, first of all. They offer clues about you. And then third, they need to be tailored to the organization, so the organization's needs and interests. So your resume needs to reflect the job requirements posted with the job listing. And the resume needs to be directed at that specific company. So not a generic resume, not something that you mass send out. We never want to send out like a mass resume that we think is very general and applies to everybody, because it never truly does. So again, you have that 6 seconds to really stand out and be unique and make sure that your resume is very tailored to that company. And I think that gets you more yeses and a lot less nos. So we want to avoid mass sending, and we want to address the specific organization and the specific job. To do that, we want to do a lot of company research, and again, always including those requirements from the job in our resume to show that we can meet those requirements and often exceed those requirements. So guys, again, the main thing here is we don't want to be generic. We want to tailor our resumes to the organization. I've heard a lot of times where people, especially those looking for jobs right out of college, are just sending out like 30 to 50 resumes to various companies and applying for jobs, and just hitting and including their resume from their desktop onto all of these applications. And the resume is never specifically tailored to the organization, and then they're not getting results. So guys, this is really key to getting into the race gates, right? Into those starting gates. You want to really tailor your resume to the audience. 4 here, your resume needs to be impeccable. So impeccable appearance, squeaky clean. So it's not sloppy, it's error-free. You've probably had multiple people proofread your resume. You don't want to use whiteout or scratch something out and use hand corrections. We want it to be, again, as clean as possible. Most likely, almost always typed in this day and age. If you make a mistake, go back and fix that mistake and then make a new copy. It's good if your resume contains white space. We don't want to just see a page of words, so that's very overwhelming, and you might just go into the no pile because they don't find your resume easy to read. So including some white space, avoid crowding. If you're handing in a resume or mailing in a resume in the physical form, so like an actual envelope and letter, then you need to try and use some really heavy paper. There's actually resume paper, and you want to choose a white or light natural color, again, to avoid any distractions in terms of the presentation of your resume. So heavy paper is always best, white or light natural color. Then you want to use you want it to be clear, so you want to use a high quality printer or copy machine. So again, never giving them an excuse to put your resume in the no pile because they can't read it or something is unclear. So again, impeccable appearance is important. Then we'll move on here to word usage. So we want to use I sparingly, and we'll talk about how we can use descriptive words instead. So a lot of I statements, not super good in resumes. We want to try and be a bit more creative and a bit more straightforward in terms of how we fit the job. So not just us ourselves, but how we are value added and benefit the company. So use I sparingly. Also, we want to avoid terms like fired or unemployed or terminated. Instead, we might use the phrase, the position ended. So we never want to point out that something negative happened in our previous jobs. We'll just say that the position ended and we're moving on and looking for new and better opportunities, something along those lines. Then we want to use positive descriptive words, so something like created, developed, analyzed, assembled, managed, purchased, published, processed, consulted, prepared, etc. So those are very active and measurable verbs, so you might be able to actually provide those examples of how you created something, how you developed something, and give us a little bit more detail there instead of just saying I can do this, this, and this. Pages 20 and 21 of the career guide offer some more of these descriptive words, and I provided that link in this module with this lecture as well. So be sure and really check out that career guide. It has a lot of awesome content for you in terms of creating your resume. There's also sample resumes, a resume checklist, a resume guide, so be sure, please check out that link. All right, so number 6 is creativity. So use caution when choosing how to be creative with your resume. You really want to know the company and follow the guidelines for length and other stipulations that they may have. So if you're going for creativity, it may take away from the professional look of the resume. Now that may fit in certain fields better than others. So for example, if you are a graphic designer, maybe creativity really fits well into how you are constructing your resume. If you are going into something a lot more corporate, maybe you really want to stick with a professional look to your resume, a very clean, organized look. You want to try and avoid 2 pages. 1 is better. So more is not always better in terms of resumes. Again, they have that 6 seconds. So you want to provide the most relevant material and really highlight the most applicable skill sets. So caution with creativity. Creativity can be really good and help you stand out in certain fields. It can really detract and take away from the professional nature of the job in others. So again, caution with creativity. And here's a couple examples. Some of these will really resonate with you and others might not as much. So here is a resume for a photographer. So you can see where maybe they have some Photoshop skills, some organization skills, the imaging there. This is for a graphic illustrator, so you might see some of their skills in their resume. Here is for a graphic designer, and another one here for graphic and website design and photography, illustration, all that stuff. So you can see here where creative resumes might really benefit and catch somebody in a positive way in these kinds of situations. But if you were applying for a corporate or even managerial job, these might not apply as much. So you might want to stick to a more traditional format there. Alright, so now we'll get into some elements on our resume. A couple of things to avoid here. We want to avoid including our age, our religion, our weight, our marital status, anything like that unless the company specifically asks. So maybe you are going to work for a religious institution and then you might need to provide your religion. But other than that, we leave those kinds of demographic elements out of our resumes. We do want to include our name, a good mailing address, a phone number. You want to avoid using your job phone number because you don't want to be getting calls from other potential jobs while you are on the job. So always providing your cell phone is better. And then also making sure you have a professional voicemail set up if you can't answer that call, to kind of leave a good, again, first impression in that company's mind about you. Your email address, again, you want to use a personal email and not a work email, and you want to avoid offensive names. So I'll give you an embarrassing personal example. In 7th grade, I set up my Facebook account, and I thought it was funny to make my email a funny email. So I love the color pink, even still today, and I was kind of dorky. So my email was literally pink.dork@hotmail.com. Now, I do not have that email anymore to this day related to anything professional or job-oriented, but it is still my login email for my Facebook. And I'm thinking that I'm really going to have to change that now because I do work in advertising and I have to log on to my Facebook a lot in the professional setting in order to manage others' accounts. And that kind of reflects badly upon me that is still a very immature login. So again, email addresses, avoid offensive names, really make them professional. Typically using your name is great. LinkedIn profiles. LinkedIns are becoming more and more prevalent. So a lot of jobs are looking to your LinkedIn account, kind of screening you through your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your other social media to begin. So all these things are included at the top of your resume. And you can actually change your LinkedIn link itself. And this is very easy to do if you just Google how to change your LinkedIn URL. And it's super, super simple. So mine here is just linkedin.com/Bree-Brasher. And that just makes it really professional and really easy for somebody to find you on LinkedIn. And we'll talk about ways to make our LinkedIn the most presentable in this class as well. So you'll have that kind of in the bag as you go forward in terms of resume, interview, and your LinkedIn profile by the end of this class. Okay, so what else do we put at the top of the page? We put all these logistics at the top of the page. What else? So there's a career objective, which typically used to be used all the time, and now it's not used as often. Sometimes we don't have this at all. But the other replacement is an executive or professional summary. And there's three basic versions of this, I guess, that you can use. So the first of which is a personal marketing branding statement. You can also have a summary of assets and personal strengths, achievements, or skills at the top of your page if you choose to. So here's an example of a professional summary. So it's a personal branding statement. It's really unique to you, describes what you do, who you serve. In essence, it's your catch line about your expertise. So it's very short, very to the point, but typically pretty creative. So here are some examples from myperfectresume.com. So if you are a top producing sales professional, maybe your professional summary says, positioned to draw on record of achievement and success to deliver exceptional sales results that maximize unequivocal strengths as outstanding top producing sales professional. Maybe you're a junior software engineer and it says equipped to deliver current education and training in computer science applications delivered through enthusiastic, positive, can-do attitude and trainability. So those are examples of your professional summary. Again, very tailored to you, what you do. The next one is a summary of assets. So based on our career guide that I provided for you, here are some summary of assets that you might choose to use. So demonstrated skills as a self-starter who builds strong relationships with clients. Constantly met sales goals while working independently in a satellite office. Had highest client retention of all sales representatives in Western Division. Earned Certificate of Mastery from RCE Institute while working full-time. So it's just kind of a compilation of the things that you really bring to the table, the assets that you have based on previous experience. Strengths or achievements of skills, and this is one of the first things potential employers see. It's typically again towards the top of the page. So you might put that you have exceptional technological skills, and then you go into more detail there in terms of what applications you are really good at, such as Word, Excel, Adobe, Photoshop. You demonstrated initiative and self-motivation. So then you want to provide a specific example of how you might have done so. So at least one example, this could be something like financed 50% of your education. Cross-cultural communication skills, you might say something like you have a Spanish minor. You might say something like you've obtained through extensive international travel and study in Central America. Okay, so now we're going to look at an example of these resumes online on that career guide from UW. Okay, so again, we're here in UW's career guide, and I provided that link for you, and we're looking at Cowboy Joe's resume. And here we can see that he has that more traditional career objective at the top. That says summer employment or internship utilizing communication and graphic arts background to develop multimedia presentations. Willing to relocate for the summer. So again, if you're going to a career fair or something along those lines, maybe you want that really straightforward objective stating what you're looking for in terms of employment or an internship. Then there's other examples here where you can see Alexander Agriculture doesn't really have that at the top of the page, but they do have skills over here. So it's not necessarily right the first thing that you see, because typically people read left to right, but it's still over here where you have skills, awards, and honors, and all those other things. Betty Business, you can see kind of how hers is outlined. Clara Communications here has her relevant skills right at the top. So relevant skills related to public relations, graphic design, and journalism. So you see what she's looking for, and then the skills that she has to offer to meet these job descriptions. So a couple examples there, again, really utilizing the career guide and all of the examples and tips that it has to offer. All right, so continuing on here with our resume elements, we'll talk about education. So we always need an education section, and we want to start, so since high school, everything since high school. If you are in college, it's just assume that you've graduated high school and that's kind of in the past. We're starting here with what's happened in our college education. So you want to put the degrees earned and typically also the location, so the university or college or institution that you were attending. You want to include both major and minor fields of study, your dates of attendance, and your graduation date. So if you are already applying for jobs maybe in your last semester of college, you might put your anticipated graduation date, internships, those kinds of things. They might want to know exactly when you plan to graduate. You want to include your GPA if it's helpful, if space permits, and if that GPA is impressive. So really highlight it if it is, maybe leave it out if not so much. And again, guys, there's examples of how you might structure your education section in the career guide. Moving into our experience section here, this is typically a work experience or an employment history section, and here you can highlight and eliminate other jobs. So again, we're trying to keep things to one page. We're really just including the most relevant experience that we have. So the older you get, the more experience you will kind of rack up, and you'll have to decide what is most important for each job. Again, remembering to tailor this resume to the specific company and job that you are applying for. So you also want to include your duties performed. Phrases are okay in resumes. You don't need to write everything out in complete declarative sentences. Again, space is limited here, so phrases are okay. But in using phrases, we want to make sure that we're using concrete language and technical terminology typically related to the field that we're applying in. The experience section often follows the education section. So again, we have those skills, our personal statement. If we choose to at the very top of the page, then we typically go into education as we are still college students, and then we go into our work experience. An example of what we can highlight and eliminate in work experience. My sister is a mechanical engineering student at UW, and she's in her junior, senior classes there, and she is applying for a lot of internships. In her first couple summers home from college, she worked at the country club and the golf shop at our local golf course. So in thinking about her relevant work experience in applying for engineering jobs, she really only has kind of that job to fall back on as of now, and then her coursework. So obviously her coursework and her good GPA are going to be at the top of her resume, really drawing in that she's looking for an internship to apply her skills, right? But then she's going to have to include that work experience that's not super relevant, but she's going to really point out the pieces of that job that may be relevant within those engineering type of internships. So working with other people, assisting other people, working in teams, scheduling, all those kinds of things. She's really going to highlight how that job could help her in her future engineering endeavors. Now, after coming back from an internship, she's going to obviously put that internship experience in that company at the top of her work experience, and then move into those other jobs that she's had in the past. So you want to always fill your work experience as much as you can there, but then really only highlighting the parts of the job that are relevant, the parts of the job that you might be able to connect there. So you want to include the duties you performed. Again, phrases are okay, and it often follows the education section. Here, guys, we'll move into the special interest section of our resume should we choose to add it. You might have some community service that's really relevant, tells a lot about you, tells a lot about what you're interested in and how that might apply to the specific job you're applying for. Maybe, again, here you include the languages you can speak, being sure that you can actually fluently speak those languages. Special equipment and relevant hobbies, so things that you might do on the side that really add to your qualifications for a certain job. Maybe you're a volunteer firefighter, maybe you're very good with heavy equipment and that can apply in your job, even if it's just on a basis of understanding what somebody underneath you or somebody that you contract with does on a daily basis. Any certifications that you have, maybe it's a CDL, all those things, a special driver's license. And then lastly here, references. So you can provide these references if requested, but you really don't even need to put references available upon request on your resume. So have those references ready if the company does ask, but you don't need to provide them up front right away. All right, then we'll move into the two main types of resumes here. The first of which is chronological, and this is the most common type of resume. So this one emphasizes kind of what we talked about so far, that work experience, that education, and any related experience. And here we list the dates in reverse order. So the most recent thing that you did will come up first. So typically the experience that you've had most recently will be most tied to what you want to do. So especially if you're getting internships in college related to your field of study, you want to have the most recent internship, for instance, at the very top of your work experience. You want to have your majors and your minors in college, the most recent degrees that you've earned, at the top of your education section, and then related experience, hopefully the most recent related experience or the most relevant related experience, again, will be at the top. But most of this is based on dates, based on time, and the most recent is listed first. So here we'll look at an example from our career guide, and this is Ellen-E English, and here you can see that she put her education here at the top, she put her GPA, she put her minor, she put relevant skills within her major. Then she has her experience here, and she put her start date and her end date, and here she has her most recent, so she's actually still doing this job. And then you can see all the way, I think it goes all the way down to like 2012 here. So obviously starting as soon as we can and then providing as much as we can that's relevant within the space. If you have things that go back almost too far, maybe those are the things that you cut because you only have certain space. So obviously the most relevant skills and the most relevant in terms of time, the most recent in terms of time. All right, the next type is a functional approach. So this is used less often, but it does have its advantages. So it features skills you bring to the job. It gives examples of your significant experiences. So rather than organized by jobs in a timeline, it's really based on your skill set. So this is suitable for people that are re-entering the job market. So the first example that pops to mind is if a mom, so maybe you worked for a little bit, had a baby or two, and then you take some time off, and then once your kid gets into kindergarten, maybe you want to get back into working full-time. So you're re-entering the job market. So a functional approach might be great for your resume. Those with a variety of unrelated jobs, so if you just have a variety of skills, you've kind of popped around in various avenues at the job market, this might be the best for you. Those changing careers, so if you're switching fields, and those with gaps in employment history, that kind of goes with those re-entering the job market, or those whose past titles don't adequately represent qualifications. So you may have an official title within a company, but maybe it didn't fully encompass everything that you did in that job and for that company. So a functional approach not used as much, but again, it does really have its niche and advantages for some people. So resumes, a strong resume focuses on the employer's needs. It's very concise and it's very honest and truthful. So again, we're really tailoring our message to specific jobs. We're being very concise using technical language related to the field. And again, we're being very honest and truthful in how we present ourselves and portray ourselves in our resume. Shifting gears here, we'll talk about job application letters. So less common, but still really good to know. You can have a letter of inquiry. So this is used to determine if a potential employer has a job opening in your area, and your resume will accompany this letter. So for example, maybe you're moving to a new town or city, and you are inquiring with a company just to see maybe if they have a job posting or if they think they'll have one in the near future related to your degree or what you've done in the past. So you're just kind of putting out your feelers to see if there's any opportunities available or upcoming here with a letter of inquiry. A cover letter, on the other hand, which is more typical, is sent with your resume, transcripts, and other requested material when you know the employer has a job opening. So you found a job opening and you are specifically applying for that opening, and you'll often provide a cover letter. Some people request no cover letter. A lot of people kind of leave it up to you. If that happens, I would take that extra step, again, seeing how you can set yourself apart and provide a cover letter even if not asked. So sometimes there's just a place for attachments, specifically in online settings, and then you can also always provide a cover letter if you are mailing in an application or handing it in person. I think it's just an added extra personal touch. But again, guys, cover letters here need to be sent to a specific individual, so a specific individual at that company, spelled correctly and with their correct title. A lot of times this person will be listed in the job posting, and if it's not, try and do some digging and find out who you should send the resume or who you should address the resume to. That might just be an extra phone call, a little bit of extra research. If you absolutely can't find it, maybe you're just using the company holistically and saying to whom it may concern. But that's a last resort, again, taking any extra steps you can to set yourself apart there. The first paragraph, you want to identify the position you are applying for within that company. And then you want to state how you know of the position. So if you're responding to an ad, you want to identify the job title and the number and publication. So if you saw it maybe in a help wanted ad in the newspaper, if you saw it on Indeed, if you saw it on LinkedIn, you're going to list how you found the job. And then as always, you want to state if you have any connection to the company. So connections are really big in landing a job. So do you know someone internally? Do you have connections to the company holistically? How can you kind of set yourself apart and create that connection right away in your cover letter? Other things to consider with your cover letter, kind of in this second paragraph, you want to explain why you want to work for the company. So you're going to need to do some company research and figure out how you fit within the company. So what can you offer to be value added? What's going to be your niche in the company? How can you benefit them? So explain why you want to work for the company, point out why they should hire you, your achievements, your training, your qualifications, anything that can set you apart for that position. You want to provide an introduction of yourself there too. You want to include a description of one or two accomplishments relevant to the job at hand and offer evidence to back up those claims. So how past experience may benefit current open position. So you want to use really specific examples, again, being very concise in how you present those examples. We don't want to ramble on in our cover letter, but you do want to provide, again, those specific exact instances of your accomplishments and how they are relevant to the job. Your final paragraph, you want to refer to the enclosed resume. So oftentimes you'll see, as the enclosed resume states, you'll see that I have all of the qualifications for the job, something along those lines. The next thing you might include is a statement regarding the next step you hope that the company takes. Something like, I really hope to hear from you soon so we can take the next steps and pursue this opportunity. Then you want to express gratitude to the reader for considering you. So gratitude, appreciation for them considering you. Something like, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to review my cover letter and application. Something along those lines. Okay, finishing up here, guys, you can have electronic resumes, which I've touched on a little bit here. And again, there's some positives and negatives. So electronic resumes are pretty easy to read. The negative of that is it may not arrive in the same format as you sent it. And so I often suggest PDF formats just to make sure that it's more of an image rather than a document where formatting can change. It's sent quickly for positions, so they get your application immediately rather than sending something through snail mail. And a large pool can see your application, so a lot of people within a company or within a hiring situation can see your application in the electronic format. Electronic format, a negative of that is that they're often scanned, so they're looking for keywords provided in the job description, and if you don't use those exact words and phrases in your resume, you are automatically not included in the pool to go forward. So that's very, very important, guys, that we are including those keywords and phrases in how we are structuring our resume and really tailoring, again, to that job description and that company, because we don't want to be excluded right off the bat because we didn't use that terminology. So your privacy is not ensured if you're sending things online. Your boss could potentially even see that you're applying for other jobs, those kinds of things. And then in the online format, there's usually a larger pool of applicants than if you are handing in a resume in person or sending via snail mail. So all things to consider in terms of electronic resumes. Lastly, guys, we're going to talk about a follow-up letter. So you should send a follow-up letter 1 to 2 days following an email. So you can do a typed or handwritten letter, or following an interview, excuse me. You can do a typed or handwritten letter. I've often seen even emails, but again, keeping our emails very professional in that manner. So just like you would write a letter, you would write your email. Remind the person, the hiring person, or the person that interviewed you of your uniqueness and strength. So again, reiterating those things that you touched on in your interview, reiterating why you are qualified for the job, really pounding home how you can serve the company. You want to address any concerns if the interviewer had any. If they didn't, then I would leave that out. You'll want to be as positive and excited as possible and leave out any negatives. Then, just as with your resume and cover letter, you want to really check over your letter, make sure it's free of mistakes, all names are spelled correctly, grammar, spacing, all that good stuff. Okay, so that is it for our resumes lecture. Please start in on your resume and cover letter assignment. And again, referencing that career guide as much as you need, a really great resource provided by UW.